the MEAC for 18 years, currently serving as the Senior Associate Commissioner for Administration and Compliance and Senior Women's Administrator. Also the coordinator of MEAC Professional Development Workshop for women interested in college athletics administration. Tomorrow we'll kick off the MEAC's 50th anniversary, and we are excited to be participating in that, driving sponsorship, driving silent auction donations, and continuing on the media side. Also joining us will be Lynn Thompson, VP Intercollegiate Athletics at Bethune-Cookman University. Lynn began his career in 1991 as the youngest D1 athletic director in the nation and is now the longest tenured D1 athletics director. Lynn was named the 2020 National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics, NACDA, Under Armour Athletic Director of the Year. Under his tenure, the school has won 71 athletics championships. Willard Bailey, the president and CEO of Central International College, longstanding, incredibly successful head coach at Virginia Union University, Norfolk State, and St. Paul's College over 44 years. Willard is the biggest winner in terms of number of games in Virginia college football history. Also serving many charitable organizations, currently heads up Central Intercollegiate College. Keisha Kelly, CEO and founder of Black College Experience. Keisha founded BCE, which is an HBCU sports podcast to bring important exposure to historically Black colleges and university athletics. She created a scholarship which was awarded for 2 HBCU students in honor of her late father, James Kelly. Keisha was a recipient of the 40 Under 40 Award by Southern University Alumni Federation based on the success of her career, community service, and continued dedication. Finally, George Lynch, NBA 12-year veteran and NCAA champion, who was a first-round pick of the Los Angeles Lakers in 1993 after winning the title at North Carolina. After a tremendous career post his NBA career, served as assistant coach to Larry Brown at SMU, and most recently founded HBCU Heroes, which is raising funding to level the playing field for all HBCU sports programs. Georgia Power is sponsoring our conference today. They are the largest electric subsidiary of the Southern Company and America's premier energy company. Some of the cornerstones are value, reliability, customer service, and stewardship. Neil Malvone will lead this important panel. Neil has been with us since the beginning, 6 years at Collegiate Sports Management Group, heads up business partnerships, as well as the esports vertical. So with that, I will turn it over to Neil Malvone.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Michael. And most importantly, thank you to our panelists. We have a very distinguished and esteemed panel today. All of our panelists touch HBCUs in various ways, from a conference perspective, school and athletic department perspective, as a former coach and educator, from a graduate media side perspective, and as the CEO of a nonprofit. All of their respective positions are going to be very valuable as we discuss the current state and future of HBCU institutions. Let's start by asking everyone to talk about their what they think is the current overview of HBCU athletics from their respective perspectives. And let's start with Sonja, please.
Thanks so much, Neil, and thanks to CSMG for inviting me to speak. Basically, I graduated from Old Dominion University, which is a predominantly white institution. So it was an eye-opener being able to get involved with HBCUs. I went to Hampton for grad school, but really didn't get into the culture of HBCUs until I was able to work there in the athletics department. And, you know, HBCUs have such a rich history of traditions and with amazing athletes. You know, when you talk about Walter Payton, Jerry Rice, Althea Gibson, Tariq Cohen's, Darius Leonard. You know, we have a rich history of individuals, athletes who came from HBCUs. And, you know, I think that sometimes people downplay the contributions of what HBCUs, you know, have to the athletics landscape. So I think that the more that, you know, HBCUs are on linear and digital broadcasts, you see the rich history, the traditions, the culture. When you talk about the bands, the cheerleaders, this is what you get from HBCU. And so the more that we get on larger platforms, everybody's able to see what HBCUs have to bring to athletics.
I appreciate that perspective, Sonja, and we'll certainly talk about that that addition to HBCUs by having more media opportunities for them. Let's turn over to Coach Willard Bailey. Coach, what's your perspective right now regarding HBCUs? You were a longtime coach at several HBCU schools and a tenured professor at those schools. Where do you see HBCUs currently?
Well, HBCUs are still extremely relevant, but as you have mentioned, it's been a long time since I began coaching and teaching at college. In fact, it began in 1964 at Virginia Union University. I was only 24 years of age, but the second year that I was at Virginia Union, the campus became my family and the family of my family. We began scheduling pretty much everything around the college because everything as a young man was looking for at that time, I found right there on the college environment. And we began teaching with other professors and of course coaching with other persons, creating relationships throughout the country. And I mean the entire country. For a small school, we were recruiting throughout the country, from California to New York, Florida to Maine. We were recruiting all over the country. But the point that I will never forget, not just about the faculty and staff coming together as a family, but the students themselves. Usually relatively small populations compared to the major universities. Our students were among anywhere from 1,200 to 5,000 students throughout. No school at that time was more than 5,000 students. And I think many of the smaller colleges were right between 1,200 and 1,800 students. But the point is, the second year that our students returned to campus, whether they were athletes or regular students, when they came back the second year, they really felt that they were coming into a very important part of their family for life. The relationships created on the average HBCU campus, those relationships are for life. And our students, homecoming events, major events, Founders Day, and all of these things, when our kids return, they return as if they're having a family reunion, a block party. But they expect to see everyone, and everyone expects to see them. I think that's a major part, even before I got into athletic competition. That part is a very, very important part, particularly.
Yeah, the family atmosphere, Coach, is certainly an important part of the HBCU community, especially on the campuses, as you've mentioned. I want to turn it over to Keisha, who's probably most directly related to that campus experience, having graduated from Southern University and returns there so many times for athletic events and just regular activities. Keisha, talk about about your current perspective of the HBCUs from that mentality as a student and graduate.
So for everyone that doesn't know, I eat, sleep, breathe HBCUs. It's a 365 thing. It's every day, all day. I'm going to come at you talking about HBCU.
Keisha, we're having trouble hearing you. Keisha?
So Alabama A&M raised me, and Southern University educated me. So, you know, I still have that connection. I have a twin sister that graduated from Alabama A&M, so I'm still well connected across the board when you talk about athletics, when you talk about the environment of just going back and just seeing what's going on from, you know, everything from infrastructure, homecoming, everything that's going on with your university is very important. And I still remember stepping on the campus of Southern University in 1999. I still remember what I had on, from the shirts to the sneakers. I still remember being that scared child that stepped on the campus, and here I am, almost 20 years graduate. They know my first, middle, and last name. So, you know, it's one of those things that they never forget. They never forget it.
I appreciate that perspective, and you're right. There is something special about HBCUs that you just don't forget. George, you weren't a student at an HBCU, but you're currently involved with HBCU programs with your nonprofit HBCU Heroes. Where do you see, or what do you see currently in regard to HBCU communities and campuses?
Well, I had the opportunity to spend the last 2 years coaching at Clark, Atlanta. You know, where, you know, you have Clark, you have Morehouse, you have Spelman, you have Morris Brown, right there within a 2-block radius in Atlanta. And my experiences was a great experience. Like a couple of panelists said before, it's a smaller campus. I think Clark had about 3,500 students. The sense of pride within that community was big. You know, the homecomings, they look forward to the homecomings and the football games, the marching bands, and everything, you know, evolves around sports at those universities. I think is great. And then the love and the support that the faculty is able to give those young men and women throughout their, you know, college experience is unbelievable.
I appreciate that, George, and we will get back to that, and also with your nonprofit in a few minutes. Let's finish up this question with Lynn and your perspective as an athletic director for so long, and your interaction with generations of students. Where do you see the current state of HBCUs right now?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Can you hear me well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you know, and being a product of an HBCU and growing up in a community and in the neighborhood of an HBCU and working there now, HBCUs have quite frankly and simply been producers and influencers of the middle class of Black America. That's what it was, and that's what it continues to be. The nature of what HBCUs do. And we've been the connecting point between the family unit, the church, the civic community, and even the corporate community. And we still maintain that connecting point to this day. How we do it in a variety of different ways. I mean, we take the talent of our young people and we harness it, and then we integrate that into those various communities, from a family standpoint, from a corporate standpoint, civic, and we take those talents and we just spread them out. Athletically, we take the brightest and the best. We've endeavored to do that for generations. We still try to do that to this, you know, and we've lost the battle because of marketing and because of much larger institutions, but we still are in the fight to make sure that we're providing educational opportunities for the best of the best from not only our community, but we give opportunities for kids who even don't look like us. We still make sure that we maintain our relevance We go out of the way to recruit kids who want to represent the institutions and the legacies and the missions of our institutions. And I think that that's the difference between HBCUs and maybe other institutions. We don't have quotas. We don't have hidden agendas. We just want to play ball and educate kids and win games, point blank.
Life would be a lot simpler, Lynn, if that was the philosophy across the country, right? Nice
Amen.
and simple.
Amen.
Amen to that. So my takeaway from 1964, when Coach Bailey stepped onto the campus at Virginia Union, all the way to today, is the word family. Every single person answered with that word, and that's a fascinating perspective from all these different people that we have so far today on the panel, is that word family. And I think as we go through the rest of our discussion today, that word's going to keep coming back. Let's turn our attention to today and the situation that we're dealing with the coronavirus. Clearly, there's some impacts on the athletic field. There's some impact with recruitment and enrollment. We learned this week that Morehouse College is going to not have any fall sports. Some other schools, TCNJ in New Jersey, Bowdoin in Maine, are all looking now to cancel their fall season. What does that mean for athletic departments, practices, schedules, media coverage as we head into 2021? Let's start with Lynn, since you're most directly impacted by that.
And I'm laughing at that because I was reading some text from our director of sports medicine right before we started. What that means is that the variables change on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, we changed our football reporting date this morning because we've been watching the spike in the state of Florida in terms of the COVID numbers. And for us, the bottom line is not wins and losses. The bottom line is our souls and lives, you know, and we are not driven by a spreadsheet that says how much money we are going to generate in terms of games. We're not leveraged. Our athletics program is not leveraged because of facilities and so many other payments that we must make. We're concerned, quite frankly, about the health and safety of these student athletes. And I guess we're fortunate in that regard that there are some institutions who are very concerned about media rights and their obligations to televise events and the like. But as it relates to the COVID-19, we are constantly looking and re-looking at every aspect of our program from a budgetary and a health and safety standpoint. And every athletics director worth his or her salt is in line with the thinking on campus, in the medical community, and in the scientific community to daily check upon the trends and all of the nuances that are involved in this pandemic. We just on tomorrow, I happen to serve as the chair of the MEAC Forecasting Committee, and our responsibility is to look at the data and to provide from a conference perspective all of the plans and the strategies that the conference will need to spread amongst the membership. And we are looking at schedule redesigns. We are looking at the possibilities of doing something innovative, divisional play, so many different things in an attempt to get a season in if it is safe to do so. And at this point, we still don't know if it will be safe to do so, although we are making plans to roll out the season. At a moment's notice, we may have to just stop down and say, in the best interest of our students and our student athletes, we're going to call it.
I appreciate that perspective. It's great having that insight from an athletic director who's right on the front lines and getting text moments before our panel today. That's hot off the press information. We appreciate that, Lynn. Keisha, you're heavily invested in the athletics of HBCUs, not just football. I love to tell the story that that Keisha's the only person I know that's interviewed a women's volleyball coach and some of those non-revenue generating sports, so to speak. Where do you see this virus in athletics and from a media perspective?
Well, kind of like Lynn said, I do like the fact that athletic directors and commissioners are taking it one day at a time. Of course, from a fan standpoint, you know, season ticket holders, they look at it differently. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to make sure those student athletes are safe, to make sure that those student athletes are taken care of. It's the most important thing, in my opinion. As far as media, I'm like, you know, we can always show up. We can always just grab stories. We can always grab those off the websites and grab those off the social media pages and kind of push it. But, you know, at the end of the day, like he said, I think it's most important that, you know, we continue to track it and continue to keep up, you know, the guidelines. And you look at, you know, football is a contact sport. So how do you social distance that? How do you choose how many fans are there? You know, and you get the Southern universities, the FAMUs, the Jackson States, the Gramblin's, the Alabama A&Ms. You know, how do you choose who comes in the game? So, you know, I think, you know, they're doing everything that they need to do. Lynn, I wouldn't want to have your job because it sounds like a tough job, but I commend you on it. I commend you on it.
Sonja, the conference level right now, it's hard enough for Lynn to manage one school, but you know the MEAC has to manage multiple schools with multiple sports. Where is the conference right now regarding coronavirus, its impact, and what the fall and spring are going to look like?
Yeah, so basically, and actually Lynn and myself were on a AD's call prior to this, discussing the work of the forecasting committee. The forecasting committee was derived of the athletic directors and SWAs who are looking at how the season, how the fall and virtually the spring will look, whether it's going to be a condensed season, how, you know, what testing should be, because of course we need to make sure that, you know, if somebody tests positive at a game, what that looks like to the opposing team, you know, if they're there, and then what are those protocols, you know. So a lot of they've been meeting since March twice a week, Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, because it's so fluid, you know, with the pandemic is so fluid, and because each state opens at its different phases differently. So, you know, we're constantly looking at how we're going to safely start the season and, you know, keep our student athletes safe. So you'll notice that we know that when they bring their student athletes back, that somebody's going to test positive. That's a given. It's not if, it's when. And then, you know, what are those things that, you know, the institutions are going to do to minimize the exposure, the tracing of those students to keep it minimal. So the conference, you know, we're still moving forward cautiously, but of course with the work of the forecasting committee, we'll begin to look at how the season will lay out. And then once we get into the fall, then how will the spring look as well? So we're a lot of things back conference-wise, where the events, meetings, all that's virtual now. So, but you know, we're trying to see how we're going to be able to function in this fluid situation.
Yeah, and the challenge you face, Sonja, is you have different states in the conference. So a hot spot in Florida may not be a hot spot in Maryland, or vice versa. And so a school in Florida may not be able to practice, but a school in Maryland can. Right. So where do you have competitive balance issues and fairness and equity that all has to be taken into consideration.
Right, you're exactly right, and I think so, at some point, I think on one of the calls, I think with one of my NCAA calls, is, you know, you want to be fair, and everybody wants to start on time, everybody wants at the same time, but there's no way that that's going to happen the way the pandemic is working across the country, and like you said, with the hot spots. So we can only move as quickly as we can based on our particular area.
Yeah, a hot spot today could be cold tomorrow, and a cold spot today could be hot tomorrow. So
Right.
it's very difficult to plan ahead. Coach Bailey, you're a president at Central International College, and so your perspective is more than just the athletic side. You're also looking at the welfare of the students.
Absolutely. We are fortunate right now in the state of Virginia. We're one of the few states in our area, along with Pennsylvania, that seems to be dealing well with the coronavirus in terms of its numbers going down, death rates going down. Everything in the state of Virginia right now, you would check the maps, you will see that we are in much better shape than a lot of our brother states and sister states. But, and I think it's that way in our state because the governor of the state of Virginia is a former surgeon. He's been in the medical profession all of his professional career. And of course, he never did get caught up in holidays and recreational activities and all of that. He is a scientist. He is gonna always go the way of the scientist. And for that reason, he looks at the numbers, he looks at the recommendation from reliable groups like the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and of course, the other medical specialist personnel throughout the nation. He pays more attention to what they're saying, and he is hooked in completely with that. And that's helping everybody in the state. It started off a little, he had to do a lot of molecular bombardment to start his program, but now that it's in place, and it seems to be working extremely well, the people in the state of Virginia seems to be agreeing more and more and more. And the governor that wasn't too popular a few months ago, he's a very popular person now because the people believe in him and he believes in science. Okay.
Popularity comes from strength and crisis leadership, and when our leaders are strong during crises, they certainly seem to become more popular, Coach.
Right.
George, I know you're not, directly involved on the campus side, but your organization now is dealing with youth at the HBCU schools. Where do you see the virus in terms of impact? It sounds like there are multiple advantages.
I think it's impacting enrollment, whether kids will be able to come back to school. I was coaching, this fall at Atlanta University, and a lot of the students are questioning whether they're going to be able to come back and enroll. So that's kind of the hang up there in Atlanta, Georgia. And then with Clark being a D2 Division II school, enrollment is very key to their sustainability. I think before COVID hit, enrollment was down $4 million into an institution like that. That is very impactful on where they can spend dollars into their sports program.
I agree with that, George. Enrollment is a big part of this impact, especially at HBCU schools where, that's critical to a small school's ability to stay functioning and even to possibly even stay open. That kind of segues nicely into the question of funding for HBCUs, certainly a major concern. Quentin Ross, president of Alabama State University, predicted a loss in the millions at their school. Statistics tell us that HBCUs traditionally are poorly funded, and now you add the coronavirus into the mix. We're starting to see some people step up. Reed Hastings, CEO of Netflix, donating $40 million to Morehouse College, Spelman College. We're seeing McDonald's create a fund of $500,000. Let's talk about the funding issues. Lynn, let's start at the school level. What you said before that you're fortunate enough that your school isn't leveraged, but I'm certain that there's funding concerns now with the virus in the big picture.
Absolutely, Neil. But, and not only in athletics, but across the board. And let's be honest about this. HBCUs historically have suffered from marketing and the inability to seal deals. Let's drill down to the vending level. For vendors who come to campus and who do business with our institutions, there is a lack of many of our institutions to seal the same level of deals that other institutions have. And I'm talking about partnerships. And so many of us who have marketing departments have to rely on the vending list on our campuses to even call through those lists to solicit the existing vendors on our campus to get them to partner with us. Because there are a variety of those corporations who would rather do business but don't want to partner, so to speak. And other institutions may not have those same issues or problems. And so, and many of us, and I know we talk about it from a conference standpoint, we ride around to see other institutions and we'll see who their sponsors may be. And some of those same sponsors are in business with us on our own campuses. And so we have to go out and target them with the same amount of vigor to say, what's the deal here? Why aren't you in business or partnership with us? And so it takes an added amount of pressure and a whole lot more effort for us to find that ability for us to get those marketing dollars on our campuses and in our athletics programs. But to be frank with you, we do suffer because of that, and we also suffer significantly because of alumni relationships. When you look in terms, I know at our institution, our alumni giving rate is less than 10%, you know, and many of them have not, and we've got to do a much better job of training our alumni to invest, not to give back, but to invest back into the flagship. And that is one of the efforts that we've done. One of our mottos at Bethune-Cookman, and it's been for years, is enter to learn, depart to serve. And so we've changed it athletically. Now our motto is enter to learn, depart to serve, and return to invest. And so we brand that now, that all of our athletes and many of our donors from most recent years, we're conditioning them to invest back into the program. And we are seeing very slowly, we're seeing an increase in alumni donations, and the alumni giving rate is going up slowly. But let's be real about it. Our programs, our brand, have become brand ambassadors for our institutions, and historically, that's what we've done. We have carried the banner of branding our institutions. Every time you see the crawl on ESPN, it sells our institution. Most of the paraphernalia sales are driven because of intercollegiate athletics, and as a result, our institutions, we also drive recruitment, you know, but it's also how we account for those dollars. And athletically, you know, we are not set up like most major universities as auxiliaries or athletic associations that are in business to create a distinct stream of revenue to support ourselves. And that is because that was not the mission of our institutions. You know, our programs were designed to be a part of the institution and never a set apart from it or much bigger than the institution. We are a very vital role in our institutions. We are brand ambassadors, and our goal is to just further the mission and the cause of our institutions, as opposed to some of the other major universities who, you know, they've got athletic associations who make more money than the institution at the end of the year. And so from an HBCU standpoint, there's value, there's a lot of relevance there. We do a great job of maintaining the relevance. and selling the story and telling the story of our
And hopefully that will translate into more giving back, more investment, as you said, from the alumni, and maybe a better message or story to tell to the brands out there that need to get on campus to do some marketing.
Absolutely.
George, again, funding is a big part of what your HBCU Heroes organization does in trying to give back now with scholarships and other things. Talk a little bit about what you're doing at the HBCU Heroes regarding that issue of funding that's so prevalent on HBCU campuses.
Yes, like I said, that's 2 years. I spent the last 2 years coaching at Clark Atlanta, and part of the the pressure on the athletic department was getting alumni and corporate sponsorships to partner. So I started HBC Heroes to level the playing field and bring awareness to athletic programs at HBCUs. Our goal right now is to get learning devices to the student athletes across campuses throughout the country. I had 9 of my 13 student athletes, when we're sent home for virtual learning, didn't have Wi-Fi, did not have laptops to continue their education, and we went into a quick mode of trying to get those devices, and we've been able to donate over 200 devices to North Carolina A&T, to Clark, to Morehouse, to Paul Quinn College, to Florida Memorial, and several other institutions to help their student athletes get the devices they need to finish their education. So it's very important to get the alumni to attend games, to like you said, I think it was less than 7% give back at Clark Atlanta. And even, at that number, you just got to remember the type of dollars that are coming in. You got some PWI institutions that has over $1 billion of endowment, and we're probably looking at, less than 20 million at some of these institutions. So it's a big, gap between the PWIs with the sponsorships and the HBCUs.
No question. And what you're doing with your organization is very impressive, and giving back. When you start, to me, it seems that will open the floodgates and everybody will want to help out. And like I said, we're seeing that with Netflix, we're seeing that with McDonald's, some other companies now. And that's a good mission, and it's a good, opportunity to start to help out where it's needed most. Coach, again, the funding issue at your new school must be a challenge.
Oh, no question. Starting off as a very small school in the state of Virginia, its youngest college, I often tell people, not only are we the youngest college, the smallest college, but we're definitely the poorest college. So starting off, we need a lot of help coming from a lot of directions. We're getting some people sparingly to come in and support us in a very nice way. But we're going to need to keep that going in terms of athletic competition. I've been part of athletic competitions all of my professional life, and anywhere you find me, you're not going to find athletic competition too far away. So we are building that at a small independent conference, joining we are a church college. We have been sanctioned by the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia to award a degree in religious studies to begin with. We're programmed to be accredited by June of 2021. But we are working small, taking a small step at a time. So we want it to be a solid step. And someone has mentioned marketing. We want the world to know what we're marketing and what we're all about, because it doesn't do you any good to have anything if nobody knows about it. And secondly, the thing we know we need right away are relationships based on those parts of a relationship that's candid and valid. So we're building those two things as we try to build a campus. We've had volunteers that believe in our mission. They have come in, 3/4 of our staff have started off as volunteers because they really believe what we're offering the young folk really need. So we have that as a major force behind us. And of course, I'm doing everything I can do to continue to bring good people into our setting.
George, Coach, I don't envy the fact that you're trying to start a school under these financial and virus-laden times. And I can't imagine that the school could have chosen anybody better to lead them, somebody that's been in this world of academics and athletics as long as you have. And you know, I know you're on the right track, but certainly there's a lot of work to be done.
No question. No question.
Keisha, your Black College Experience organization did something amazing last year when you gave out some scholarships to 2 students in honor of your father. And so you recognize those issues with funding.
Yes, most definitely. When you talk about, you know, the thing that you and I always have this conversation about, you know, I'm not an ESPN, I'm not a large platform, but I've reached 1 million people. So, you know, oftentimes funding is often the situation of students, it could be a matter of $500 of somebody getting registered for school. And all of us have been to college, so we understand those $250 and those $500 start to add up. And it could be the difference in a book, Scantron's, or whatever it is. So I did last year in honor of my late father, I did decide to start a scholarship in his name. And last year, I'm a grinder, I'm a hustler, and I'm gonna get it done. So I don't have partnerships, I don't have sponsorships, I don't have people knocking down the door saying, hey, let me give you money. It doesn't happen like that. So I have to find it how I find it. And so I have so many people that believe in me because they watched this journey since I started back in 2016, when I initially said, we're gonna go from not only bringing, you know, the exposure to the athletes, but we're going to start a scholarship. And I did. We did t-shirts. T-shirts was the way that I got the money. So we designed a t-shirt with Black College Experience, made money off of it. We did $800 of scholarships, $500 to a student at Howard, $300 to, of course, to a student at my alma mater. So now we're on track with almost $2,000, which is much better to say that we're in a pandemic. But again, I don't have the sponsorships. I don't have the things that other people do. So I'm just literally having people that donate money and say, hey, we believe in you because we know what you're doing. We know that you're going to give these dollars to somebody else. So what happens is we just take the money, it's in a business account, boom, when it's time to start school, we just put the scholarships where they need to be put.
Keisha, I've said this many times to you in all the years we've known each other, that I don't think there's anybody around that has the passion for HBCUs that you do. And then when you combine that with your work ethic and you combine that with your desire to give back, you're on the right track, and great things are ahead for you.
Thank you.
I want to turn our attention for a moment to an area that I'm most familiar with at CSMG, and that's esports. And seeing, is that the next wave? Is that another option for recruitment? Is that another option for enrollment opportunities and revenue opportunities? George, you have an exciting event coming up on July 3rd. Talk about this esports piece of the business and where you see it going.
Yes, I think the you know, with the new generation of millennial kids, esports is very big. You know, some of the schools like J.C. Smith has a curriculum for esports that not only teach the kids how to develop the game, but it teaches them the business side of it. And if you follow Twitch and some of the other platforms, it's a $1 billion industry, and there's untapped dollars for HBCUs. We're like you mentioned, we're hosting an HBCU esports tournament alongside with the streaming of Congressman John Lewis' Get Out and Vote campaign. But we have 6 schools that's going to participate in it. Southern, Virginia Union, we got several others that slip in my mind, but we have about 6 schools that's going to participate in the start. We wanted to launch a 64 university March Madness tournament right before the pandemic hit. So we'll follow that up to next fall's Final Four in Indianapolis. It'll be the first time that it's done with HBCUs, and we're looking forward to it.
George, I think Hampton and Johnson C. Smith are part of that
Yes.
event as well.
Yes, correct.
Sonia, where does the conference see esports? What direction do they see it going? I know there's been some preliminary discussions, but is that something on the horizon in terms of helping the conference, especially with this virus in traditional sports?
Absolutely. I think anybody in their right mind would know this is where things are going. And I think this would be a great way for HBCUs for revenue generation. And I think that is where it's going to be. And I think the SWAC just announced that they have are sponsoring esports. So I think conferences will slowly begin to do that, because that's where, like I think George said, that's where the money is, the $1 billion, and it brings diversity to your campuses, because you got the multitude of students who are geared towards esports. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's the future.
Lynn, any thoughts at BCU over there that's something on the horizon?
Absolutely. We had a lot of momentum going 2 years ago ahead of the curve, and we had 2 young staff members who were involved with our CAT-I network, who were going to lead the cause, and the NBA 2K league snatched them up and took them away from us, and we lost the momentum. We thought we were ahead of everybody, and so now we're engaging in some conversation with our computer information systems academic sector on campus, and so we're going to do a partnership across the campus spectrum. But what Coach Lynch said, and everybody else, and I do know that our conference office is working with an agreement, conference-wide agreement on esports. This is where it's headed. If the NCAA doesn't want to sanction it yet, who cares? This is where the industry is going. The world is moving in this direction. The kids are already on our campuses. The platforms are in place. The interest is there. And if we don't jump in, then we're being negligent, okay? And so we're going to do that.
And if you tie in that interest level with academics, whether it's STEM programming or it's the business side of esports,
Yes.
Certainly there's an opportunity there to help with that enrollment issue, funding issue, et cetera, where some corporations such as Intel or Verizon, and they'll be more inclined to get on those campuses when they can help on the academic side as well. So before we shift to our closing statements, I'd be remiss if we didn't at least address what's going on in the world around us, and obviously the current impact of movements across the country, such as Black Lives Matters, and what is that impact having on HBCU schools? Certainly they're kind of in the spotlight now, more so than ever, which is a good thing. Keisha, why don't we start with you? I know you've been involved in some activities in Atlanta. Talk about that and how this can help HBCU schools in the long run.
I did. I actually did 2 different protests here. I did one downtown on one day, then I did one that was specifically geared towards HBCUs. I was really surprised as to how many young people turned out from Clark Atlanta, from Spelman, from Morehouse, from Morris Brown. It was so many people out there, and these are young people out here marching and protesting about injustices, talking about the different things, police brutality. And I think, you know, when you see someone that looks like you, someone that's close in the age proximity as you, that's marching for something that's right, that's doing something, trying to get their voice heard, I think it makes a major difference when it's something that you can directly relate to. And so I think we're starting to see the shift. We're starting to see the change, because we know, we can all admit that we're not on the same playing ground. We've never been on the same playing ground as other institutions. We have never been afforded the same opportunities as other institutions. So I think now that it's starting to shift with everything that's going on with the Breonna Taylors, the George Floyds, the Ahmaud Arbors, I think it's starting to shift where not only are more students starting to look at HBCUs, you also have athletes that are starting to consider more of our schools, more of our programs. And like I said, we love to have those students there, but we can't forget to celebrate those students that have already chose our schools, chose our programs before any of this started.
I agree with that, but and I also agree that if students are now looking at HBCUs again, then that's a positive that's come out of a very difficult situation. Coach, you've experienced these movements throughout your time in education. 1964, certainly a very volatile time and an important time in our history in our country with the Civil Rights Act. Talk about what you've seen in the past and compare it to what's happening today.
Well, you know, never forget Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who came on Virginia Union's campus a few times. I never forget him saying years ago, there are a lot of people of other races and other religions that are real good people, but they choose to be quiet. They don't speak up, they don't stand up, but they're good people. But when they saw, in my opinion, when there was a renaissance that took place, when they looked in the face of that officer who held his knee on that Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 47 seconds. When they looked into his face, they didn't like or for Don what they saw. He reminded them of Hitler. He reminded them of Mussolini. He reminded them of Stalin. And they looked for the first time, many of them, with a different attitude because they saw real evil in that face, and they didn't like that. They didn't want their children to identify with that type of face. This is why not only the United States of America responded to that, but the entire world responded to that. They don't like that, and that, I really believe that's gonna drive a lot of people to do what 2 Chronicles 7:14 is saying to us, okay? And that, I think that's gonna be a major barometer that's gonna cause real change in attitudes of people and loving people of other relations, other religions, other races. Both sides, we got a lot of work to do on both sides of the agenda.
That would be that would be a positive results for sure, Coach. If we could start to see love in everybody and stop with all of the anger and hatred. Tragedy is nothing to certainly celebrate, and we're certainly not doing that here. But if something good can come out of tragedy, then we can hopefully turn the corner. Sonja, what's happening at the MEAC in regard to these movements that we're seeing across the country?
So one of the things that we've done recently had working with Florida A&M's SAC presidents had a forum or symposium to talk about the social injustice issues, to get their feelings, and then what they're doing on their campus, and then finding their voice, reminding the student athletes that their voice is strong. So getting out there and making a change, and and what that would look like. So I think one of the things that we are working on with our SAC is going to be voting, getting ready for the vote in November, and encouraging their teams to get ready for the absentee vote. How do you do it? How do you register for it? And getting out there. And then of course, I think across all the conferences recently, looking at my email of institutions or conferences having the November 4th off, voting the day off, to encourage everybody to get out there and vote. So there's no excuse why you can't do that. So we want to make sure that we are help facilitate the student voice, and not only talk about it, but be about the change.
That's again another positive that can come out of this, is if we do have more young people engaged in the system, I think then real change can start to happen. George, the NBA announced yesterday or today that they're going to have Black Lives Matter written on the courts if and when they're able to reopen down in Orlando. What are your thoughts on what's going on here with the movements in Black Lives Matter from your perspective?
I think it's great. We haven't had, a lot of athletes, at least in my time from 93 to 2005, while I was playing, speak out, against racial injustices, but, LeBron James has done a great job leading the NBA in that endeavor. The new commissioner, Adam Silver, has spoken highly about Black Lives Matter. And then the other guys, Chris Paul and some of the other visible athletes that have definitely stepped up and made their voices stand, that, the things that went against the police injustices against George Floyd and several others, can't continue. This is 2020, and, the sports teams who revitalize this economy and push it, needs to be more boisterous and visible during these times.
I couldn't agree more. It's almost like we need another Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to kind of bring attention to some of the injustices that we're seeing. Lynn, I'll finish this topic with you from the campus perspective. What are you seeing across campus, and what are your plans when school does start again and the students come back?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay,
let me just give it to you this way, from two vantage points. Historically, in the mission of every HBCU, deeply rooted and embedded in our missions are the early pieces of social justice. Now, it's been there for decades and generations, because we were founded based on that, social justice. They didn't call it that then. We were fighting that, but back then it was just us. It wasn't just this, it was just us fighting this battle. Now the whole world has joined in, because they realized that something is wrong. And Coach Bailey did say it right. When they saw that, they saw Hitler, they saw Mussolini, they saw a great wrong. And now our Office of Student Athlete Services did a virtual town hall with our athletes 2 weeks ago, and they asked me to talk. And what came out of that was some memories as a young teenager in Florida. I marched coming up, you know, in support of garbage workers who weren't being paid, or in support of hospital workers, and people threw rocks at us. And I forgot all about that. And then I had to tell our student athletes this, you know, because they wanted to say something. And I encouraged them, use your platform. And I told them, you already do this everywhere you go. When you go to play on the road, you wearing your school colors. They hate you because of what you got on, because of the colors you wear. You step up to your platform. It may be the free throw line. It may be the batter's box. It may be the goal line. Whatever that is, that's your platform. And people get paid. Coaches, professionals get paid to learn your tendencies and use them, your weaknesses, against you. And while they do that, you've got to recognize what your strengths are. And regardless of if you get emotionally caught up, you've got to recognize when it's your time to speak. Speak with authority and with the knowledge that's in you, and speak your authentic truth. And these kids are speaking truth to power right now. And so if it's our responsibility to make sure that we give them the right opportunities to speak their authentic truth to power. And remember, we're in the business of educating young people. Yeah, they might be 6'9", 245, or they may be able to run real fast or throw a football. But our mission is still to educate them and to put information inside their hearts and their minds, so that then when they graduate, that they'll be able to raise their kids in a society that will be safe, prosperous for them, and so that generations of their families will be ensured that their generations will have a great life to consider, and be ensured that they'll go for generation and generation. And that's really what we all endeavor to do. And so at Bethune-Cookman, that is our mission. And when we come back in the fall, our Department of Athletics is going to partner with Student Affairs to continue to just re-emphasize to those kids, you have a platform. If you're an athlete, you already understand how to act on that platform. But we're going to teach you how to speak your truth to power.
Appreciate those thoughts, Lynn, and I couldn't have expressed that any better than you have, and of course, having lived it the way you have, it's an important message for us to see. I teach at a small school in North Jersey, Caldwell University, and we are proud of the diversity we have on campus, and we had a panel like this to talk about social injustice and bring attention to it. And I think if we see that across all campuses, not just HBCUs, then this movement is really going to have an impact. And I'm proud of where I work and what we do at Caldwell for our mission. And I could hear it in all of your voices, how important this message is. And certainly we want to all support and make those changes that are necessary, because nobody should have to be thought of as a Hitler or Mussolini anymore. Those days are long past, and we as a society should be better, and the people in our society deserve better, and that's hopefully what will come from what we're doing here. I'd like to throw a curveball at you guys as we do our last question here. It's the closing remarks. I'll give you an opportunity to say anything that's on your mind in regard to what you're doing and your thought on HBCUs. But when you do that, I'm going to ask you to take one word about what HBCU means to you in wrapping up your answer in your closing remarks. So let's start with Keisha. One word that describes HBCUs to you, and then any final thoughts you may have.
Well, the one word I would always use would be tradition. And wrapping up, I always advocate and I tell people, now is the time to tell our story. If not when, if not us, then who? Also, if you want to check out Black College Experience, the website is up and running. It's at blackcollegeexperienceinc.com. You can see everything that's going on there, interviews, athletes, everything that we've done in the past. And you can also make a donation. So that's where we are with Black College.
Keisha, I think I was one of the first ones on that website. And as you know, You're certainly welcome back to HBCU Spirit of America Bowl this year. Hopefully we will have the event, and as always, you are our welcome guest. Thank you for coming today. Coach Bailey, one word that describes HBCUs, and then any final remarks you may have.
Well, I would have to say an attitude of gratitude. My gratitude for all of those persons that's been a part of my life for so many years, my student athletes, my fellow students that I taught. You know, I've never coached a semester without teaching at least 3 classes. And the director of athletics, head football coach, and teaching 3 classes. I don't have to tell you what my attitude toward my great athletes and great assistant coaches were so crucial. I could not have done that with that type of schedule without great people. My attitude of gratitude is enormous.
Well, that's well said, Coach, and your insights today have been very helpful and very informative, and we appreciate you taking time out of that busy schedule. And I can say on behalf of CSMG, we certainly have a lot of gratitude towards you today. George, one word to describe HBCUs and some final thoughts.
I want to say generosity. I think for HBCUs to survive, they're going to need corporate generosity. They're going to need generosity from individuals, from alumni to supporters of the universities to continue the good work that HBCUs does. And I'm working on a campaign with Congressman John Lewis of Georgia to get out and vote. We're trying to reach out to all students at HBCUs ages 18 through 25, that demographic, because it's going to take them to make change in what's going on today. So everybody get out and vote this term, and be very generous to your HBCUs.
Generosity is a great word, George, and I think we're starting to see that with some major corporations, and hopefully that will continue and help build back the HBCU campuses. Lynn, again, one word to describe HBCUs, and then some final thoughts, and we again appreciate your time.
I think that one word for me is essential. Just as prayer is essential to the soul, I think our universities are essential to this nation. They are a link to our culture and our heritage and our history. They are a link to corporate America. I think that if corporate America wants the African American and the Black experience, they need to invest in HBCUs. I think that if the core of the Black family, HBCUs have been exclusively the educational link to first generation Black college students. And remember, we were created because as the only source of education for African Americans who had no other choices to go to college. And we have mastered that for decades. And so we are essentially needed across this nation, more so now than ever before, when people are debating the relevance of institutions like ours. I think the question should not be relevance. I think they should always say that they are so essential now in this era of social justice, when folks now want to be able to study our youth, and where diversity is always debated. I think they need to look at our types of institutions to see where diversity is really preached and practiced in great fashion and great form.
Lynn, the word essential also applies to your insights and your thoughts today, and we certainly appreciate that. And the message of essentialness on the HBCU campuses is one that we should not forget. And we're going to close here with Sonja. Before we do, Sonja, I wanted to also thank our sponsor, Georgia Power, for being part of our panel today and sponsoring this great discussion that we've had. Sonja, Again, one word to describe HBCUs and then some final thoughts. And as always, we thank you for your time as well.
Thank you. My final, I think one word is family. Absolutely. You know, HBCUs are the nurturers, you know, those who are teaching us our culture, our, you know, instilling the pride that we have for African-American students. So, you know, coming back for homecoming, you're seeing family. It doesn't matter if you're going to a particular school. You go to different homecomings because it's like a family. It doesn't matter who you are, you're still brought into the same circle of love, you know, in an HBCU. So, you know, I missed out going to ODU but I'm so blessed to have learned about HBCUs and have been engrossed, and now that is family to me. So I can't speak nothing but high praises about HBCUs and what they do for the country and athletics platform and for Black America.
I have been to a few HBCU homecoming and rivalry games, and I have to tell you, there is nothing like it anywhere. The food, the music, the dancing, the tradition. It's a great way to end this panel by all of us thinking about those days.
It's okay for you to hype up Bayou Classic. It's okay for you to hype up Bayou Classic.
I was going to end with Bayou Classic because that's where it all started, quite frankly. So we know that Eddie Robinson started that rivalry because he knew how important it was for the HBCU schools to celebrate their culture and celebrate their music and tradition and the dancing and the halftime shows. You know, he was a great coach, but he was also a smart man to understand the value of the campus. Again, my thanks to the entire panel. Our thanks to Georgia Power, and please reach out with any comments or questions you may have for CSMG or the panelists. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks to talk about analytics in sports and the importance of that data and how it can help with marketing, how it could help with media and sponsorship. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you.